Okay, folks, I'm going to give this a shot here. Let's go ahead and get our eyes up to the board here, and we'll start looking at the class text. Okay, so we worked our way through links. We're about to get to this, but I'm going to wait till after we talk a little bit about CSS. This section of tables is a bit more complicated. So I'll go ahead and open Dreamweaver here. Now, technically, it's covered in, I think it's chapter 8 of the text. We'll talk a little bit about it now. The first thing to know about about CSS is that there's sort of three main ways to do it. So one of them is you go into an individual opening tag here. And I think most of you by this point have tried this. Let's say that you have like a paragraph here that you want to add something to. Inside the opening tag, you make a bunch of parameters, kind of like we did with the source for links, or like href for a link, I should say, or src source for a picture. We have another one in here called style. And notice it turns green. That's a color coding for a parameter that you're putting inside an opening tag, right? Same with source, same with href. So we'll hit style, and I always use this autocomplete here. I just kind of hit enter. So equals and then quotation marks. And in this style, we can put a series of commands, not just one, but several. So I could say something like background, and notice once again, let's try to help me autocomplete here. Now I'm pretty zoomed in, so it's kind of hard to see, but there's a whole list of things that it's suggesting here. If I already know what it is, I can just type it, but the more I add, the more it will kind of fill in what it suggests. So what I'm looking for is background color. Once you get mostly there, that's basically what it's on, so I can just hit enter to autocomplete it. Now we're using these name value pairs, and this is very common. The name of the command, or I should say of the feature we're accessing, the background dash color, and then a colon separates it from the value. So the value of our background color is going to be, well, let's say, I don't remember if there's a sand. Oh, we have salmon. Let's do dark salmon or light salmon. Now, each one of these is also going to end with a semicolon. So this is pretty standard for CSS. We have a command, a name, colon, a value for that name, and then we terminate the line or that command with a semicolon. Now we can put more in here. Background color is the color in the background, right? But if I put just color and then colon, and then let's say, I'm trying to think of what that one is called. There's a certain blue. Oh, actually, I'll do deep sky blue. So again, salmon, this is actually going to look ugly, so bear with me. Sorry to do this to your eyes. We're going to have a light salmon background in the blue text. But just so you can kind of see, so we have a little bit of contrast here. Semicolon, once again, I could do more. I could do more like, say, font family. Now, I'm using the up arrow key to go through all these suggestions here, if I don't remember what it is. Or, if I were zoomed out, you'll be able to see more of that. I zoom in for the sake of showing this on projector. But now, my suggestion box, see, I can scroll through this a lot easier, and I'm using my scroll wheel on the mouse to actually scroll through this. So I chose font family, and do impact. Once again, I end that with a semicolon. I'm going to zoom back in. I'm going to get rid of this image because I hate this long link that they have on here. It's just kind of getting in the way of everything. So let me just delete this. Alright, so I have div, then I have style equals, then background color colon red semicolon, border is black. Oops, sorry, that's the one above. So background color colon light salmon semicolon, color colon deep sky blue semicolon, font family. Font family looks a little different. It's kind of a longer command than we're used to for CSS because it's font family colon, and then it lists off a comma separated list of different fonts here. And some of them have these single quotes, some don't. Basically what this is doing, font family, because you can choose a font by just saying font, but font family will try the one you want the most. If that does not work, it goes to the next part of the comma separated list. Now these ones don't have these single quotes on them because they're specific. But once we start getting into these, they have a semicolon because it's looking for anything in that family. So think about it like this. This is very specific. If we don't have that, we keep moving down the list, and basically they start getting more desperate. Like, hey, we'll accept any of these fonts. By the time we get out here, we're getting very general. We're really grasping at straw. It's just saying, hey, we're almost out of fonts. And by here, we're saying, as long as it's a sans serif, we don't care, right? At that point, you're basically accepting anything sans serif. So this is kind of a Cascading hierarchy. Give us our first choice, our second choice. If we don't have that, we're starting to loosen the net about how stringent we are. We're getting a little bit more open. Here, anything that's Arial and the color black, and here, anything that's sans serif. So that one looks a little different from some of the others. There's a lot of other CSS we can put in here. One thing I'd like to point out too is notice that I am saying names like a light salmon for color, deep sky blue, etc. But it's important to understand that really all these colors are done what we call hexadecimal. And if you get into something like computer science, you're going to see this all the time. Hex colors are, I believe it's base 16. So you know how we have 0 through 10, we have a base 10 numbering system? Well, what they do with computers, if they need more options than that, like binary, it's ones and zeros, and there's 8 digits, right? So it is 2 to the power of 8, which is why we see 255 so much in computers, or even like Photoshop. The max value you can have for the red channel is 255, green 255. In computers, you'll see 255 colors for like 8-bit graphics on Nintendo. That's why it's all mathematical. We have 1 or 0, off or on, and there are 8 of those in binary, right? So what we're doing here is we're just saying, hey, we need more options than we have in a numbering system of 0 through 10. So what if we went 0 through, or 1 through 9, and then A through F in the alphabet? It gives us more options. So you're going to see that with a hashtag or a pound sign, depending on how old you are. We always called it pound sign, and now it's called a hashtag, right? And that is this guy right here. So if you see that, that is going to be what we call a hashtag, right? So hexadecimal colors.
Josh, this is Kenzie Martinez. She's going to join your class for 4th hour.
Okay. So here is what the color truly is, right? This is the color, and here we have the hexadecimal. Now the names, what they've done is they've only named ones that are common, right? So there's a lot of other colors out there that don't have a named version, like red, black, light salmon, etc. Just because it's not named doesn't mean you can't use it. You're going to see some of them here. Now even in Photoshop, we can actually explore the color options we have here. Let me open up Photoshop real quick, and I'll show you how we can use a color picker. Just going to try and make sure OBS is still recording here. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so I will go and make a new document here. Actually, I'll open this one. We're making this in Photoshop class. Basically, our digital photos. We got some Teletubbies and dinosaurs, right? Let's say I want to pick a new color. So I'll go up to Window, and I will choose some sort of color picker. Let's try that. Now colors here, you can see all these wheels and stuff, and this is hue, saturation, brightness, which is one way we can determine colors. Hue is like the basic category, like a green. And then once we find this a green, we tell it how saturated it is, how pure is that green or red or whatever, and then also how bright is that red or green. That's a common coloring system, right? But if we go up here, we could do something else like web color sliders. So this is red, green, and blue, and notice this is hexadecimal. And what that 6-digit number you're seeing with the pound sign really is, the first 2 digits go up to FF, right? So it's 0 through FF. And then the second of the 6, 0 through FF. And then the third, 0 through FF. So really, using just hexadecimal, you could make any color you wanted to. Let's Let's see, I know they have another setup here. Let's try Hue Cube. Let's see what we can get out of here. Okay. Oh, down here also. So in the color picker, basically if you double click this in Photoshop, you're going to get this. And we can type in different stuff here like 00FF99. Or we could do something like, what do you think all zeros would be? Let's see what happens. Black, right? But you are right in the opposite end of the... Remember, F is actually the max values because it goes 0 through 9, then A through F. Now, I'm not going to give you a test or something about this, really. I might mention the basics. I don't expect you to be an expert of computer science or anything, right? But... see, that would be white. It's important to kind of know where this comes from because if you're using colors that aren't named, you're going to have to find the hexadecimal values for them. Luckily, that's about as simple as doing this, just going to the web and looking at a table of hex values. Maybe. Okay, so you can go through and you can basically see all of them at once too. Like if I went to images, for instance, there are these things that show basically all the colors. Right? So we'd see something like FFF, F000. I'm betting this is pretty close to the gold that MSU Bozeman uses in their logo, right? Because they're blue and gold. So they have a very specific number. Funny part, this actually connects, I would say, to like graphic design and branding. So graphic designers use very, very, very specific colors when they're doing like packaging, web design, all that, right? And they will give a branding kit to the company or the client they make it for. So let's say MSU Bozeman hired this graphic design company. They made MSU a logo. They gave them all the fonts they should use, all the font styles, like this whole branding guide that covers everything visual, right? There's going to be some very specific colors in here, and they're going to be shown in Pantone, which is used for printing a bunch of other stuff. And also, they would say something like, hey, if you're using web, you have to use these hexadecimal colors so they match exactly to all of our printed material in our branding guide, right? So a little bit on hex. So we can use these name value pairs for when they do exist, which isn't for every color, but they do for a lot. Commonly used colors, basically. All right, let's see what else we can do. That's kind of some of the basics. We can change fonts, we can change size. Another one that is popular, text, dash a line, center, and then semicolon. All right, so see this thanks to Google is now in the center. All right, that one's commonly used. Okay, so all of this I have put in the opening tag. Now, can you foresee any problems with this, though? Think about making a whole web page. Yep, every single paragraph tag you have to put in all of that, right? Say you have a bunch of H1s. Now, what if you're managing a site like Nike.com that has, say, 200 pages? Can you imagine what kind of nightmare this is going to turn into? Every single paragraph, you have to put that in the opening tag. Every single heading, every single whatever, right? So it's not super practical. So we came up with another system. That system is to go up to the top here and put in the head section. Remember, the customer or the user never sees the head section. This is like information for bots, web browsers, etc., right? So we put in a style tag. and then a closing tag, and we can put a bunch of rules in here. So let's say we want to do the same thing we just did, but we need it to affect every paragraph. All we put is the HTML tag, P, and then we do curly braces. And inside those curly braces, we can do as many code blocks as we want to affect all the paragraphs in this page. So I could copy the stuff I had down here. Now I'm not going to use this same thing here with a style quotation. All I need is the actual command. So notice I'm just getting what's inside the curly braces here. So I'll do copy. Now remember, doesn't matter where I put line breaks in here. Is it going to affect the actual page up here? Nope. If you use an actual break tag, a BR, that makes line breaks or certain other things. But to make this readable, we commonly write code like this. We say the HTML element we're applying it to, then curly braces, and then we usually put one command per line. This one's just a very long command, that's why. So this ends here. Or actually, no, we have one here. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Won't break anything, won't cause any problems, right? Boom. This makes it very readable. It's kind of like a line-by-line command, except for this one, just because it's long, right? So I'll go down, and I'll make a few more paragraphs without putting a style tag into it. And I'm going to use that lorem we used, L-O-R-E-M, and I'll write 100 and hit tab. Remember that makes a bunch of filler text. And then I'll do an actual line break, BR. Then another paragraph. Let's see, L-O-R-E-M 100, tab, makes more filler text. Now what I'm doing, I'm just generating a bunch of text here so we can see that without me having to put the code block in every opening tag, it's actually affecting them. Do you see how these don't have anything in the opening, but because I said every paragraph is going to have the style, it's automatically on there, right? Okay, this is far more efficient than putting in opening tags, right? Because it affects every one of those tags to start the page without us having to do any extra work. And this works for anything that's HTML. I could go in and I could say H1, that's all the headings right there, boom. All the heading ones at least, right? And I could put a font on them, for instance. So I'll do Cambria. Right, and then semicolon, and I could do the color. We'll say bisque. All right, so all the H1s automatically done. Another one that's popular. Now we all know how links look, right? So I have to remember that's A, because remember the actual tag is A, not link, right? So links, they tend to be blue or purple and have an underline and a very specific font, and we're used to seeing them everywhere, and they kind of look ugly, right? Well, for people who are very brand conscious and want the style of their page to fit an aesthetic or visual guide, it's often good to take away some of those things. Now, as long as people can still tell that they're links. For instance, if you put them as buttons in the nav bar, it's going to be pretty obvious they're clickable, right? So even if you change the style, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, I'm a graphic designer working on this webpage, and I say I really hate I guess you could say the default look of links. So I'm going to say anything that's A, remember anchors, or links, are automatically going to have a style. First thing I want to do is take away that awful underline under the text for links. So text decoration, none. Font, family. I'll do Baskerville. Color, and remember color by itself affects text, background color affects the background. Cornflower blue. Okay, so let's put a link in here and see what that looks like. Actually, this is the link right here, because I forgot I had one up there. Does that look like a normal link? But notice, do you see how the cursor changes over it? Like you can click on it? This is what my links now look like. No underline. They don't have that silly amount of space text. They're not that weird color blue, right? These fit a design a lot better now. or I'm able to make them fit a design. So you can change the way links look. Here's another cool thing you can do with CSS, and we'll learn more about this later. It's called pseudo classes. I'm going to basically take my A here. I already have links laid out, but this time I'm going to put A colon hover. And I'm going to say background dash color is, I need something that really stands out. Ooh, this is going to be ugly. Okay, so background color magenta. Watch what this does up here on the link when I mouse over it. Do you see that? It only puts that background color on when I put the mouse over it. So this is called a pseudo class. So we have all the stuff for normal A tag listed out here. However, this is now the state for any A that is currently being hovered over. Right? For links, they also do stuff like this. Any link that's already been visited. Now, what's the default look for a link you already visited? Purple. Yes, it's got the underline, but it looks purple, right? Well, you could change that here. You could say any link that was visited has a different font or a different background color, or it's really up to you, right? So between these normal classes and pseudo classes, we have a lot of options. There's one more main style I want to cover here. So you can make, actually I'm going to get rid of this, so I'm going to say thing up. You can make your own classes. The only difference here is, because notice on most of these I just put something that's a pre-existing HTML link and boom, the style applies. But this time I'm going to use one that's not a pre-existing HTML link. I'll make a custom name. So I'll say was. I don't like using caps though, and really you shouldn't tag, so let's keep this lowercase. Was custom. Curly braces, and once again line by line, I can put on anything I want as far as styles. So maybe I want a different background color. Let's see what else we could do. Oh, HTML, or I mean CSS can also help with styling to some degree too, right? So I'm going to put on a command we haven't looked at before, which is float right. This tries to make things kind of line up to the right instead of left of the screen, right? We'll talk more about that later, because that stuff gets kind of complicated when it comes to doing layout with CSS. But I'm just going to put it in there so you can notice a visual difference. All right. Let's do a border, black. Now sometimes you can condense multiple commands into one thing, so I'll put in a style to double 10. Alright, now this doesn't apply to anything yet, and we don't really know how to apply it. We haven't covered that. But if I choose something and in one of these opening tags, I'm going to start to write class, and then was custom, same name I used up here. So this is a way we can put a class, and this can be used over and over again in other tags. Right? Later we'll learn about IDs. IDs can only be used once per document, but these classes can be used on multiple things, like multiple paragraphs. In fact, I'll put another one down here. Class equals was custom. Okay, so what that's referring to, this is basically leading back to my was custom here, and it's putting these rules on it. Different background color floating to the right, and a black border. I'm also going to try and round that border. Okay. So, do you see how my wise class now has a double border that's rounded around it on that paragraph where I put wise class? Okay, so notice only the ones I put the custom class on, just those two paragraphs have that. None of the rest of them do. So that means we can put that class anywhere we want. We can be really picky and choosy. Now there's one other main way to do CSS, and this is the most, well actually I wouldn't say it's complicated. It's really good in a way, but you just have to use it the right way because it can affect so many things at once. So you know the example where I said Nike might have to update 200 pages. Do you really want to put all the rules at the top of every page? No. So the best way in my mind to do this is to make an external CSS file, and any HTML file you link to it will have the same rules. So as long as you link all 200 files to it, everything in there is automatically done, right? Now when I make a new file here, you'll see that we have the option, because we've been making hypertext markup language so far, but we can do CSS. Now when we do CSS, it's got a pretty simple start here, because you remember we had boilerplate for HTML. Well, this is all that really happens in this one. So basically all I can do, or I have to do, I should say, is just start typing my HTML codes or custom classes, and then the same format we used at the top of the other page. One thing that's handy to do, let's say you have a page where you just know that every single thing on there you want the text centered. Instead of having to do it to all these elements, do it to the body tag. Because the body encompasses our whole page, right? The entire visible part's going to be between the body open and close. So if you want everything to have the same background color, put it here. Just say something like, hey, my background color for the entire body. Oops, I need you dash. So background color is going to be salmon. With an O. And all my text needs to be aligned to the center, because that's another common one where you don't have to go through a micromanage. If you know you want everything centered, just do it here for the entire body. So my text align is center. And that will apply to any text that it can discern, right? H1s, paragraphs, all that. Now, here's how you attach this to HTML. I need to save this first. I'm going to save it as CSS. So I'll say something like, this is my external.css, and this is what we call an external CSS file. Now, usually I name it the same name as the HTML page or whatever, but I'm just saying this so we know it's external. I need to be careful of where it's saving to, because what I want is for it to save in the same folder my HTML is in, right? So, because if it doesn't save in the same folder, I need to do a file path to it, navigating through all the folders between them, right? Let's check this out. This might be it. Okay, so I'm going to save it in this spot, external.css, right? Or you could go in down here too. You could mark this as CSS. Usually if you just write here, that's fine. But I could go in here and say style sheets, CSS. All right. Now that this is saved, I'll go over here, and here is how you attach an external style sheet. We would go up somewhere in the head here, between the head open and close, and we would say link href, and then we would just basically put in the name of the file. See how it already kind of guessed it, because it knows I just made this, right? Now let me show you an even easier way to do this though. So let's say I'm still typing this out, and I said href equals. Do you see how it gives me browse? This lets me use the file explorer to go find it like I would with the file system and hit OK. And it makes it for me, right? Now, even if you have to go across different folders and stuff, if you use browse, it will do that for you, right? It will navigate through all the folders. It will do a relative or absolute link, whatever it needs to do. Okay, so at this point, I have officially linked that external style sheet to this, right? And one way I can kind of check on that is if I go up here to this little CSS designer on the right, they have this little built-in thing here, and it's looking for all sources of styles. So sometimes this can help you figure out if you've linked an external sheet. Or you'll just see that the styles from that sheet show up, right? Alright, so once again, this just mimics what you would put at the top of the page here. Now it's just same format basically. The one that's the most different is the ones in the opening tag here. And the reason they look so different is because, once again, style itself is just one parameter in here, and then we have to put all the rules into the name value pair, right? So these basically come as one long list in quotation marks just because of the way that parameters are written in an opening tag. But this up here, this format, is exactly the same in the top of the page as you would have in the external file, right? So, if this doesn't all make sense, we'll keep working on it. I just want you all to have kind of a basic understanding of how the CSS works moving on, because a lot of you are already starting to introduce it. This way you can practice with it in whichever way you think is most efficient, because in the end we're going to want to be using external style sheets, right? That's just kind of the best method. But for now, it doesn't really matter how you do it. You can put it into opening tags. I highly recommend you at least put it in the top of the page, though, because we saw how much more efficient that is. Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions right now? Okay. So we'll keep going with that. We'll add more stuff to it. If it doesn't make sense yet, we'll make sure it does down the road. But at least now we have a basic equal understanding. All right. On that note, I will give you time to experiment with it.